All right. Okay. And then now that you're on, I'm going to turn off my phone. All right, Jordan.
Hey, Tim,
Yep.
is this going to be live too?
That's what I'm working on right now. So yes, it will be, but I'm still recommending everyone join the Zoom because
Okay.
if there's any glitches, we can control the Zoom better than anything else. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm putting it live to your page.
Awesome.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining so far. We're just kind of getting things set up and waiting for people to get on. Let's see here. All right.
Grigori asked, am I muted?
Yeah, everyone except for you so far.
Yep, just for a bit. Okay, good. Okay.
I don't know what Grigori is saying right now.
He said, okay, good. All right, we got 10 people on here. Hey guys, we'll be getting started here in just a minute. Tim's just finishing up a few little technical things and then we'll be good to go. Well, you're going to do a quick presentation, very quick, and then we'll have an Ask Me Anything right after that. See Alex, Grigori, John, Kyle, Lynn, Matt, Michael, Phil, Scott, and Thor are on here. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying your quarantine too.
So it should be broadcasting to Facebook here in a minute.
Okay.
At least I think it is. I haven't started recording yet. Oh, I guess I did. Pause, stop recording. It must be automatic.
Yep, streaming on Facebook too. All right, Tim, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I think so. I want to, yeah. Yep, I am ready to go here. Let me just make sure. I got so much stuff up on my desktop right now. Okay. Welcome everyone. So here, we got to figure out one thing. Before we do get going, I do got to figure out, I got to get the questions up on my screen so I can see it better. All right. Okay, I see Grigori's thing there. All right, are you're monitoring Meetup then, Jordan?
Yeah, I looked at Meetup and we didn't have any questions on how to get on, so we should be good to go.
Okay, cool. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so anyway, let's get started. We wanted to. I've got notes here. So you're monitoring Meetup.
I looked at Meetup and we didn't have any questions on how to get on, so we should be good to go. Is that a recording?
I have to turn on Facebook because I was getting an echo there. There's a little bit of a delay and it was coming back at me. All right, so everyone, so what we kind of came up with, I'm Tim Swerzik and Jordan Moorhead there leaning into the mic or the thing. what we came up with, we were talking about like we're getting a lot of questions right now, obviously, and we wanted to go over some of the questions we were getting or some of the things that people were talking about, and then really open up this to a lot of questions. So the first short period of time here, maybe the first 10 to 15 minutes, we're just gonna kind of go through a couple different some thoughts that we have, and then we want to open it up to lots of questions and take as long as we need to answer all of them. So you can even, if you want, you can start asking the questions now, but we're going to hold the actual answers until later. Preference is to ask the questions on Zoom. You could ask them on Facebook, but I had to turn my Facebook off because of the audio. If I keep it on, I can't I can't hear properly. So we decided to kind of look at this on what if I'm buying, to set it in 3 categories. What if I'm buying right now? What if I'm buying in the next 2 to 6 months? Or what do I do if I'm just a property owner right now? So we're going to break out those 3 different scenarios and give our take on those things. We can also talk a little bit about the mortgage market. I think there'll be some questions on that. So I might even save some of that to later, but I can talk on the mortgage market a little bit, and then we're going to open it up to questions. So getting started, Jordan and I have some things. So if you're going to be buying, like if you're looking to buy right now, let's see here. So if you're buying like right now and you're in the market, what sort of things do you need to be thinking of? We want to make sure that you understand that we recognize that this is an uncertain time, and that there's a lot of fear out there. We're seeing it, we're hearing it, and we understand that. Neither Jordan and I have a crystal ball. We don't know the final end results of how all this shakes out.
Absolutely.
But we do think that as much as there is uncertainty, there are tried and true ways to protect yourself and to potentially take advantage of what could be a very good opportunity. Jordan, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the transactions you've seen, because there's been some fear-based stuff, and then there's been some things going through very smooth, right? So can you just talk a little bit about what you're seeing as a realtor right now?
Yeah, so absolutely, I'm seeing a lot of fear on both sides, either buyers or sellers. So I represent both. I'm currently working with both. The people who have stayed level-headed and have just looked at things objectively, based on data, based on real data, not news. I'm not a big fan of the news. I don't always think we get accurate information from the news. Obviously, you want to be safe, you want to protect yourself, but people that are just staying logical and making decisions based on logic are still getting great deals, and they're still getting deals done. So I want to say 2 closed last week. We put 1 under contract last week or the week before, actually for somebody that works with Tim. So if it makes you feel any better, people that work in the mortgage industry are buying right now. You know, it's not just yahoos running around buying that don't know anything. People that understand how the industry works are buying right now. And there's absolutely, loans are still happening, deals are still happening, houses are going quick. I'm working with a buyer to put an offer on a duplex that has 4 offers already. It just came on the market 2 days ago. So the market really hasn't changed too much. As much as people want to think that things are different, the demand is still there. The supply is still really low and has gotten even lower. So some people are not showing their homes, especially people that live in their homes are not showing their homes to buyers. We don't have to allow showings right now, and that's kind of unique as a realtor. Is it can be active on the MLS, and we don't need to allow showings. So things are still happening. They're just happening more virtually. We're doing lots of remote showings. You know, you're not going in and getting to touch and feel everything right away. You're putting it under contract first and then going in during inspection, which is exactly what I did last week. We didn't run through the place in depth on the first showing. They went during the inspection and went through everything with the inspector. So
yeah, and maybe you can talk about like a couple of things that came to my mind. I think best practice, of course, when you're out, even if you are going to go to a property, not only the whole hand washing thing, but to wear gloves, because
Yep.
the contact with like the door handles and stuff like that, you can protect yourself quite a bit by wearing gloves. So that's,
Mhm.
one very easy thing you can do. And remember, if you do go to see one of these properties and it is during inspection, no one else is going to be there. It's just going to be you and your partner if you're buying with someone else, right? And your realtor. That's going to be it.
Well, and the inspector.
And the inspector. Yeah.
Yep. So anymore, what I'm doing and what I'm doing personally is not what all realtors are doing. This is not a blanket statement of what realtors are doing right now. What I am doing is I'm doing all initial showings via FaceTime. So I'll go there. I'll drive over there. I don't have a problem with that. I'll go in. I'm wearing gloves. I have a mask. I haven't used it yet, which maybe I'm not so smart there, but I'm doing the initial showings. During the inspection, just to keep it less cluttered, we're having the same thing where we're in contact while they're there with the inspector, but I'm not there just to add to the mix. So I'm going lots of places. I don't want to endanger anybody else if I were to get infected. So I'm doing all the legwork for people right now, and I'm just letting them kind of hang back and relax. And when they find something they want, then they get to jump in.
Yeah. So can you talk, I know the Realtor Association came out with a COVID-19 form, like
Yep.
an amendment / addendum to the purchase agreement, depending
Mhm.
on what status the deal is in. Can you talk about how that protects the transaction, and what sort of language is there in it? Without reading it, word for word, what does it cover basically?
Yeah, so essentially what it says is that, hey, if there should be any delays due to COVID-19 in either lending or any part of the transaction, you can get X amount of days extended. So we're writing in as a rule, we're doing at least 15 days extension on ours. And I don't think you're going to have a hard time getting any sellers to agree to this right now. Everybody understands they want to get the deal done. So it's just saying, hey, if anything comes up and we can't get it done due to COVID-19, whether it's an appraisal, whether it's an inspection, whether it's just actually the lender doing their job. And, obviously the lenders are working from home most of the time. And we are considered an essential business to make real estate transactions happen. So we haven't seen any sort of slowdown because of this. Now that COVID-19 addendum came out before the stay-at-home order. So I think that was the Realtors Association trying to head off, what if he tells us we can't do anything, and how can we make transactions still happen?
Right. So I think I think it's important too to say, like, when it comes to appraisals, at the current time, I'm not worried about appraisals for a couple of reasons. Appraisals are taking a long time, for the record, so everyone knows, but that might speed up. There are reasons that we can talk about later when we talk about the mortgage market. So I'm not suggesting that anyone assumes that they're going to rush through a transaction right now.
Sure.
But as far as appraisals go, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have already come up with some guidance that's going to allow us to do alternative appraisals for the short term during the crisis. But that is transaction specific. So if you're buying an investment property, everything I'm about to say doesn't matter, right? None of this applies to investment properties. But if you're buying a house that you're going to live in, so a house act or otherwise, you can get either what they call a drive-by appraisal, which means the appraiser doesn't leave their car, and or there is the possibility to do what they call a desk appraisal, which is they don't even leave their desk, right? And there's another thing they're talking about doing, which is called borrower assisted appraisals. This is a concept rather than a reality, but they're working on it quickly, where a person would go and take pictures inside the house that the appraiser can see, combined with the drive-by appraisal. So there are some things already in the works, and at least for owner-occupied transactions, I don't see this being a problem. If you're buying investment property, it might just mean waiting if appraisers are no longer allowed to do their job. So that's going to depend on stuff, but at least for the next 2 weeks, that doesn't seem like that's going to be an issue either. I did actually have someone call me the other day and ask about like the concern about having an appraiser in their house. And while I'm no doctor, my thought process on it was, you know, you don't have to be there during the appraisal. And there's nothing that said that we can't either go for a walk or go for a ride. So if the current owners leave and go for a walk, appraisers are usually there 10 minutes, 15 at the longest. So if you take a 20-minute walk, you come back, no one's going to be in your house. Appraisers are going to be cautious too, right? Wearing gloves, stuff like that. So again, while I'm not a doctor and I can't speak to it definitively, I think there's a high amount of safety, and there's certainly social distancing. When I was listening to the thing the other day, the governor even said like he was proud of people being outside working out together, social distancing. I don't know if you remember, you heard that, but there were neighborhoods of people working out together, and he thought that was great. So you can be outside and you can still do certain things that are necessary. You just got to be smart about it, right? And so you come home, you wash your hands, you use hand sanitizer, that kind of thing, right? Going back to the topic of now, there are a couple of things Jordan and I came up with for safety nets, right? So there are some things that you can write in the purchase agreement with the COVID-19. If you're worried about financing, you can write in an interest rate cap, for example. So you could say, you know, I'll buy this house provided my interest rate does not exceed, and then you come up with a number that you think that the sellers will agree to. Maybe that number is 4%, maybe it, you know, it doesn't really matter. I'm not trying to project what it should be, but you can come up with a number that gives you protection in case you're worried about the interest rate market. You can also write in something about financing if that's something that concerns you. Right now, I'm not concerned about traditional mortgages, but again, I want to talk about that a little bit more when we get into the mortgage market part of it. But I'm not worried about that currently. If it's a off mortgage, something that's atypical, then there is reason to be concerned for the short term that wouldn't work. So what can you do as a borrower? Jordan had this idea, so I'll let him take over. But Jordan, do you want to talk a little bit about reserves and why you think that's important?
Yeah, so
And explain what it is, because everyone might not know that term, right?
sure. And I think Tim and I talked about, are you buying this as an owner occupant or a house hack, and then are you buying as just a pure investment property? So I look to the banks for guidance on investment properties. They recommend that you have 6 months of principal and interest payments. And so with the residential mortgage, that's principal, interest, taxes, and insurance as a reserve in the bank. And a lot of them won't give you a loan unless you have that reserve in the bank. So that's something I try to keep myself. I want to see at least 6 months of mortgage payment in the bank. So let's say, God forbid, none of my 20 tenants can pay rent for the next 3 months. I've got a reserve for it. I'll be okay. And that's just something that's smart to do with an investment property. Tim and I talked a bit about this, reserves for house hacks. And I have a buyer who we talked about this the other day. Worst case scenario, you have to cover the mortgage. You already have to pay to live somewhere. So if you're buying a duplex to live in, and let's say your mortgage is $1,500, you got to look at your personal situation, your job, and say, hey, how likely is it that I lose my job in the next month? And do I have enough money to cover the mortgage for 3 to 6 months? So I would be a little less worried about it with a house hack. They're just not as risky. With an investment property, I really do personally believe that you need to have at least 6 months of mortgage payment in the bank. Maybe that's only 6 to 10 grand. You don't know, because it's all what your mortgage is. Are you able to pay your basic bills for 6 months on your rental property? I don't personally see that we need to be okay for more than 6 months. There's just almost zero chance this lasts that long. Again, I don't know anything. I might be completely wrong. This might last a year, but I'm planning to be okay for at least 6 months. And everybody I know that owns a business is the same way. They're saying, hey, do I have 6 months of my just general expenses in the bank for my business? And if I do, I'm going to be okay. Because we've already seen in other countries the curves start to turn around after just 2 months. So 6 months makes me feel safe at night.
Yeah, and I think going to part of that too is there's a difference between having cash and even access to cash, right? Because for a lot of us, as we're investing, you might not have 6 months of payment in the bank or even 3 months, but you might have access to it. through something like a line of credit, or like maybe you have 3 months in the bank and 3 months in a line of credit. There are a couple of different ways to cobble that together to create some safety there for your payments. And I think that's the real world thing right now is being careful with your cash, right? And Jordan and I talked about this in our personal lives. Something we're going to get to a little bit later, so I'm not going to talk about it too much now, but being careful with your personal cash is just important right now. Jordan mentioned it briefly, but assess your job. Like how likely is it that how critical is your job to the current market, right? If you're in a hospital setting, your job's pretty safe, right? If certain types of government jobs are going to be paid regardless of this market, right? Like even it looks like teachers right now are going back to work, right? They're going to be teaching their kids online. So I'm not here to assess your job for you. You need to assess your job and figure out like what it really looks like over the next 3 months or more, 6 months, something like that. And then something else we talked about here was about having solid numbers. Like this is not a time to obviously be risky on your numbers. I still always say be accurate. Don't, just because rent, you're gonna be conservative on your vacancies factor, but don't take rent from, what should be $1,500 down to $1,000 just because you're being conservative. That's just silly. Because someday it's going to be $1,500 again, right? Can you last long enough to get to that point is more the question, I think, when you're analyzing deals. And then the last thing I think that's the single most important is if a seller has a house on the market to sell right now, they want to sell, and the people who are going to win are going to be the ones who are solutions based. So if you have a problem versus they have a problem, for example, you want to push the closing out, or I don't even know, I guess it doesn't matter exactly what that solution is. Maybe something's not working or the condition of the property isn't up to where you need it to be. Can you work on a solution rather than just simply, and rather than just saying take it or leave it, right? Be flexible, I guess. Maybe they'll even give a little bit more on price if you're flexible on something else. There's definitely an opportunity to get some deals. I've seen some people pick up, I wouldn't even say that it's like prices are dropping so much as sellers are becoming extremely flexible. And particularly negotiations after a purchase agreement and after inspection.
Yeah, and I'm seeing the same thing right now too. With my buyers that we're working on deals currently, the sellers just want to know what's wrong, and if it's within reason, most of the time they're willing to fix it. Now, this is obviously person to person. You're always going to find a seller that's not willing to do anything, and no matter what, they just don't think that you should get anything from them, and they should get the exact price they agreed on with their realtor, and they're not going to do a thing, and you can't talk any logic to them. But a lot of the times you can. So yeah, I have 2 listings right now that we're going to be probably temporary not available for showing come Friday, just to give them a week or 2 break till this quarantine thing is over. And my sellers don't need to sell. So right now, if you see people that are on the market still, there may be a chance that they need to sell. Now, you're not going to know until you make an offer, but they may need to sell, and they may be really flexible with you to get it done.
Sorry about that. I was trying to get look at some comments on the Facebook, and I the volume turned on. Sorry.
Sure, but I mean, really, and always. So this year, Tim, just on a few transactions we've had, there's been major issues that we've worked around. So we had one with asbestos siding. It was going to cost $20,000 to get it remediated. We worked with the contractor to get it done before closing. The seller gave half of that to fix it. The buyer increased his purchase price by $10,000 to fix it. Now, that was something the siding was okay at the time, but in the future it was going to need to be replaced. So we just negotiated that in, and we made it happen. It's easy to make that happen all the time. This one I'm working on right now, the buyer thought, oh, these issues are too much. The seller's never going to deal with them. And we were able to talk with the seller, and and we're probably going to make it work. It sounds very promising at this point in time. So, just be creative, figure out what each party wants. Obviously, the buyer wants to buy the house, the seller wants to sell the house, and people love to negotiate. So say, hey, I want this and that. Maybe you're way far below what you think they would ever take, but they'll probably meet you somewhere in the middle. Just generally, human nature is that people they want to get something. Obviously, you want to get something. So my go-to is ask for more than what I want, ask for the world, and be happy getting somewhere in the middle. So people they want to make a deal work. People aren't selling their house just for fun. It's not fun. Even
Right.
if it's a vacant property that you don't have to move out of the property when people are coming to see it, and you don't need to clean up your stuff every time. If it's a property that you're living in, it's a complete pain to sell. But even if you're not there, it's still work to sell. So they're not doing this for fun. And people aren't buying houses for fun. I know some people on this live stream here buy for fun, but not everybody's doing it for fun. They have a goal they want to accomplish, and it's work and time put in.
Right, right. First of all, John, I did see your question. Thank you, and we are going to answer it when we get to that point. So thanks for asking. Anyone else, real quick, if you want to start firing questions in, we are going to answer every single one of them. So let's say, so that's the buy now recommendations are to get your reserves up. Don't buy if you don't have reserves. Now is not the time to be buying,
Yeah,
especially if it's non-owner occupied. If it's owner occupied, different story, right?
I would say so.
And frankly, if you're buying with a partner, maybe between the two of you have reserves non-owner occupied. So there are situations, but certainly you want to be cautious on that. And look more to vacancy being your conservative figure, not rent and some expenses. Because rent and expenses are still something we can figure out. It's the vacancy that we got to be a little more careful on right now.
And
Make sure
Tim,
your numbers are solid.
I want to add something real quick.
Okay.
Make sure you have a short-term plan for if you have more vacancy, but this isn't going to last forever. So don't look at the deal like, hey, we're always going to have 10 or 20% vacancy. This most likely this won't last more than through this year. So still analyze your deal like you're going to have a normal vacancy. I know in the Twin Cities right now, it's around 3%, or was before this whole thing happened. Maybe I was planning for 5% on any properties that I have, but maybe you plan for 10 or more right now, knowing that, hey, by fall or by next year, I'm going to be back down to a 5% vacancy.
Yeah. So going on to like the 2 to 6 month time frame, if I was looking in that time frame to buy, biggest thing I would do is try to build reserves first. A lot of times people come to me and they want to pay down debt. And by all means, if you meet with me in person, that might be my recommendation for your situation. But the most conservative thing you can do, the biggest safety feature you can do, is add to reserves. Because guess what that can always do? Those reserves can pay down debt if that's the smart choice. But they can also pay a minimum payment for a lot longer. For example, if it was going to take you $8,000 to pay off a credit card, or you're going to have to pay a $200 a month payment, right? That $200 a month payment would pay that, or that $8,000 would pay that $200 payment for multiple years before you would ever run out of money. But it would also pay for other things, because it's not just that payment you have to worry about. It's your car. It's if your car breaks down. It's many, many things. So if you think you're being conservative and safe by paying down debt, believe it or not, that is more risky than if you just keep cash. That you hear cash is king. In a down market, cash is a safety feature, but it also allows you to get deals, right? The more liquidity you have, the better deals you're going to have access to. So right now, rather than taking that like fear-based approach and going and paying off all your credit cards with all the cash you have in the bank, you need to be holding tight for the short term to see how this plays out. If you see it playing out just fine and everything's good, then maybe you pay that debt down. But if you're looking to buy a house in the next 2 to 6 months, my recommendation, before I've seen your finances, would be to hold on to cash, build it up, pay the minimum payment. Sure, you're going to pay a little bit more in interest on those accounts than if you pay them off. But believe me, that's a lot better. It's a lot better to have $8,000 to $10,000 in the bank than to have nothing in the bank to, to help you if you need money for food or utilities or anything else. So just be careful with that cash right now. Build up your reserves first. Don't worry about paying your debt down. You can always use those reserves to pay debt down later if that's the smart play. Jordan just had someone. Jordan, can you talk about getting comfortable with numbers and how someone can get ready to buy a property, both confidence-wise and numbers-wise?
Yes,
They're not out looking at houses right now. And
sure. And this is my advice to almost always is get comfortable analyzing deals and get comfortable looking at the numbers. I like to help people with this. I like them to know too. So a little hint is don't ever trust the broker's numbers. Don't rely on somebody like me to give you great numbers on a house. You need to know how to do it yourself. So this is something you want to learn in a time like this where maybe you're not ready to buy yet. You want to know how to analyze a deal and be comfortable analyzing a deal. I can absolutely help people with stuff like that, and I can help them figure out the right numbers or learn where to find accurate numbers. But you want to know for your own personal well-being and sleeping good at night, you want to know how to analyze the deal and want to know what a good deal looks like. So when you see it, you could say, hey, this is a good deal. I can move forward on it. So I can do things for people, and your realtor can do this too, like send you the previous 6 months sold in the area you're looking, or the previous year sold in the area you're looking. So you can analyze all these deals and see what's trading out there, what prices they're selling at, what a good deal looks like, and what's likely that you're going to find out there. So use this time to learn, use this time to analyze deals, use this time to build reserves if you don't have any. If you're out looking for a deal, then you need to already have this stuff done. You need to know what a good deal looks like. You need to have some reserves out there, and you could potentially get some great deals right now.
Right. You need to figure out like what properties we're selling at, so you have that baseline,
Mhm.
and what rental rates are, right? And if you get comfortable with rental rates in certain neighborhoods, probably everyone knows this on this call, but we like to recommend Rentometer to start your search there. If you can get that stuff nailed down and squared away, you can be ready to go, and you can see an opportunity, because it's one thing for an opportunity to be there. It's another thing to see it, right? And Jordan and I talk about this all the time, but finding the opportunity is going to be important, and getting comfortable with the numbers is going to be how you do that.
So something I want to touch on is I get calls, well, I get calls all the time, but especially right now, I'm getting calls all the time, all day, every day from people. Hey, what's the market doing? How's the market? Are things just crashing? Is it getting bad out there? And it's really not. So demand is still really high. Supply is really low. Interest rates are still really low right now. Some of the rates I've seen Tim lock at in the last week are great. So, the demand's still there and the supply is not there. And again, we can finance them cheaply. So I have not seen any sort of market shift right now. Currently, today, nothing. I know everybody's worried about that. Everybody's hoping for that. I know, I would love that, but I just don't think that it's going to happen personally. Again, I don't know what I don't know. I might be completely wrong. It could go bad. It could get really good. We pulled some data from the last 5 recessions, and it shows that out of the last 5 recessions, 2 had the housing market affected negatively. One had the housing market affected really negatively, and that was 2008. So obviously 2008 was caused by the lending crisis there. It's caused by some subprime mortgages and really fueled by the banking industry. I don't see that happening this time. On the other one, home prices dropped a couple percent. They didn't move that much. So I wouldn't be sitting around waiting and hoping for another housing crash. I don't see it happening. Nothing is happening yet that would suggest that. So
I know you all love watching Jordan and I, but I'm going to actually put something up here because we actually have the data of what has happened during a crash here. So looking at housing values during a recession,
mhm.
can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so housing values during a recession, you can see here, the green are positive increases and the red are decreases. So so it's an interesting thing because I think most people hear recession and they think, well, of course housing prices are going to go down, and that is entirely possible. I'm not going to even pretend I know what the answer to this one's going to be, but I can tell you this: I remember what happened after September 11th, when people lost 25% over the course of 12 months in their 401ks and stock portfolios. They realized and sought out real estate as an investment. And if real estate is considered a safe investment in this next marketplace, what you're going to see, in my opinion, is increases in price, not decreases.
Mhm.
So it is going to be hard to say, but that is absolutely a reality. I really think it's 50-50, because I don't think that there's a right answer to this, in my opinion. I think it's a wait and see, but we'll kind of see what happens there. I'm going to stop the share. If I hit stop share, you might not see me, or you might, okay, we're back on. Okay, good. I didn't, the software is new enough with me. I haven't done enough of these. I want to make sure I'm not going to cut everyone off. Let's go to the last topic, and that is going to be, oh, by the way, I mean, of course, you always do want to meet with a lender if you're at a point where you think you're going to buy in the next 2 to 6 months, so we can do things like get credit ready, stuff like that. Whether it's me or someone else, make sure you're starting that conversation.
And I met with a lender way earlier than that even. I had terrible credit. I had like a 550 and just a god awful credit score. I had some reserves, but not really enough to even buy a house at the time. So I talked to a lender 2 to 3 years before I bought, and he said, "Hey, go out and buy a secured credit card that you can give the bank $300 and they'll loan you money against that $300." And I did things, I built my credit score up from a 550 or so to a 700 over a period of time. It didn't happen right away, but it was like 6 months to a year. It jumped up quite a bit.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's ever, and obviously you know better than I because you're a lender and I'm not, I don't think there's ever a bad time to talk to a lender. Lenders are worth their weight in gold when it comes to getting your credit and everything set up where you're going to get just the best deal possible, or even be able to qualify to get something.
Yeah, and this isn't a credit, I could go on that subject for a while. This isn't a credit repair video, but something you kind of need to know if you're watching this is what your gut reaction is to what you should do to repair your credit is almost always the exact wrong thing to do. It over and over again, you see people make mistakes because common sense tells you I should do this. For example, common sense would say I should pay off all my collections. That's what people think. It's the wrong thing. It ruins your credit. It absolutely destroys your credit. Yet they think it's going to improve their credit. And I could go on and on and on. There's many examples of where people would think one thing, their parents or their grandparents would give them advice to do one thing, and it's the exact opposite of what they should actually do. So if you're going to, if you have bad credit, you should absolutely meet with a realtor as soon as possible. I really agree with you anytime. A lot of times people think that they don't qualify, or that it'd be a bad deal, or that their payment would be more, or that they don't have enough down payment, or all these other excuses. The reality is that it's not true. They don't know because they've never met with anyone before. So getting the information only gives you more power.
Yeah, and I know, Tim, you and I are always willing to sit down with somebody and talk with no expectation. So don't feel like, hey, if you talk to me, I've got to buy a house with him in 6 months or else he's going to be really pissed off. That's just not the case. I'm always willing to sit down and have a cup of coffee with somebody. I'm always willing to take a little bit of time and get on the phone with somebody. You should talk to a professional. Think back to the point of getting advice from mom and dad and grandma and grandpa. Talk to somebody that knows these things and they're an expert at it. So talk to a lender. Don't talk to your Uncle Bob.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go on to, if you own property now, what are some things you can do? And these are mostly going to be safety things, right? Like how can you insulate yourself from what is a potential problem? We don't even know that it's a problem yet, right? Because I certainly don't want to, I want to take this very balanced. I think everyone needs to be safe. I am staying at home as well. I'm in a home office.
Me too.
I'm all for everyone being safe. And at the same time, though, I'm also for people realizing that there's a potential opportunity. In situations like this, the people who are not paralyzed by fear generally will do the best and will come out of the ashes the best, right? And so that's the attitude I'm taking personally. That's where I'm coming from with all this. But you need to be careful and you need to make sure that you can come out from it. So what am I doing personally? Jordan was more aggressive on this than me, but I went and I looked through all of my subscriptions and we cut about $100 worth of reoccurring monthly subscriptions out of our budget, things that we just didn't really felt added value and that we weren't using. There are more that we could cut if we really felt we needed to. But that was just a nice opportunity to do that. Jordan, why don't you tell people what you did with subscriptions and then well, yeah, do your subscriptions first, please.
Yeah, so I cut anything I didn't need. Obviously, I evaluated that. I do some direct mail. And that was a hard one for me. I tossed that around for a while. Hey, should I keep doing direct mail? Maybe this is a good time to do direct mail. You know, other people might cut it. So I let that one stay, but I cut out any subscription, just any minor little thing. I have way too many streaming subscriptions and cut a few of those. And there's a website called Trim. I'm sure everybody's heard of it. Trim will monitor all this stuff for you and say, hey, you could cut this out or you could cut that out. And this is a great time to sign up for stuff like this. It's a great time to sign up for things like Mint. Get on a budget. Make sure you stay on that budget. No matter how much money you make, you're always going to spend what you've got available. So if you have a budget and you stick to it, and that's something I've done over the past weeks. I've set a budget for myself and I'm sticking to it. You know, so I'm not spending any more money than I have budgeted, regardless of if I have the money or not. And I'm cutting anything that I don't absolutely need. There's lots of stuff that, you know, we just don't even notice. You can go through, if you have multiple credit cards and a few bank accounts, you'd be surprised. Take some time, but you'd be surprised when you went through and saw, hey, you know, I didn't know I was still paying that. And I'm still tracking. I have $1 a month Apple bill that I have no idea what it's from, and I'm still trying to track it down and figure what it's from and cancel it. I want to save that dollar.
There's a subscriptions part of your Apple account that you can go to and it'll tell you.
Oh, well.
The worst case, you cancel it, and then if you end up with an error, like you go to your, I don't know, podcasting app or whatever the heck it is, and it doesn't like work anymore, you subscribe again.
Perfect.
I did not do this, but a strategy I used to encourage my clients who had financial difficulties to do was cancel absolutely everything, even the stuff you think that you need, and that will tell you if you need it. I'm like, if you really miss it and you really love it, you'll just resubscribe. But if you cancel it all and you just wholesale, just cancel the stuff, and then you slowly add back the stuff that you really love, that's a great way to do it. That's if you feel like you're in a dire situation. I think it's smart now for everyone to be careful. The other thing we're just starting to do is reshop our insurance. We have enough rental properties and homeowner and car that we could save hundreds, if not $1,000 a year just by doing that.
I saved thousands. I just shopped mine. I had one that was $8,500 and it just dropped to $4,500. So
yeah, right. And I wanted you to absolutely get to that. So I think that insurance, if you have a property right now for your car, your auto, you could save hundreds, if not thousands. And guess what? I was a licensed agent for a while, so I know how this works. They're actually going to make more money even if they rewrite your policy than if you stay with them. So you're going to be helping your insurance agent right now if you shop your policies. So don't think it's a burden on them, because if they rewrite a new policy, they get paid significantly more than what a renewal pays them. So make sure you shop your policies, and if you want some names of anyone, I can help you with that. But I would definitely do that. You know, this is a plug, of course, it's not necessarily for me, but for the mortgage industry. We're also saving close to $500 on our mortgage. I highly recommend that you look at refinance, and we can talk about that more in the other part of the programming if we talk about the mortgage market. But I would look at that as a possibility. We talked about contacting your server a servicer. Jordan, do you wanna head that one up about what people should do there?
Yeah, so every mortgage servicer that I've heard of or talked to, I have two different ones. I have a commercial loan, I have a residential loan right now that cover the 20 units I own. I Tim, right before we got on this call, got off the phone with the commercial loan, and he said, "Hey, we're offering 3 months forgiveness, or not forgiveness, they're just tacking it back on to the end if you need it." So I know that if I can't pay my mortgage payment anytime in the next month or two, they can give me up to 3 months that they're going to tack on the end. It's just a pay it later type of plan. I'm sure there's a name for that, but I don't know it. My residential mortgage, same thing. Last week, even they emailed me and said, "Hey, are you having issues paying your mortgage because of COVID? Here's what you can do." So every lender I've heard of, and I'm sure Tim's heard a lot more than me, but every lender I've heard of is offering options to deal with this. So if your tenants aren't paying, US Bank is my commercial lender. They even have some forgivable small, not forgivable, some very low interest small business loans available for people that can't make payroll. So if you're a business owner, there's options out there for you. Call your lenders. That's the point. Call your lenders, figure out what options are out there. It can take you a couple minutes on the phone or a couple emails. I know my residential mortgage is all online. They don't really want to hear from me, but they have a customer service line and they will answer too if you call. But this is call them before it's too late, and that's the first step to figuring out what to do if you're running out of money or you can't pay your mortgage or your tenants aren't paying. Before that even happens, call your lender and figure out what the options are.
Yep, I totally agree. Figure out what they are for you, because they're going to be different for everyone. That's why I don't want to give blanket advice.
Sure.
But there definitely are some programs out there, and there's probably more coming. So just researching a little bit now would be helpful. I think it's also very important that you come up with a plan for how you're going to deal with like if a tenant comes to you and they say that they lost their job, they can't pay their rent. So Jordan and I talked about this subject a little bit, but I kind of wanted to talk about it right now because we didn't come up with a set plan. We actually have a little differing ideas, so I think it'd be helpful for us each to kind of talk through it. Jordan, why don't you start? Like, if I called you right now and said, "Hey, Jordan, I can't pay my rent," what would your reaction be?
So my first reaction would be, hey, they're going to be sending you money here shortly, so you're going to have an option. They did pass this coronavirus stimulus bill. It's like $2 trillion, meaning that everybody that makes under $75,000 a year, it sounds like, is going to get $1,200. I don't know the exact details of that. If you have children, you're going to get $500 per child. So if you don't make a ton of money, there's going to be options for you. And there are a lot of local and state renter programs that are going to help you pay your rent if you can't pay it. So I know even before this whole COVID-19 coronavirus thing, my father had a lady that couldn't pay her rent. She called a renter assistance hotline and they paid her rent for her for 6 months. She just couldn't do it. She has some sort of brain tumor. I'm not familiar with the issue, and was working on getting on some sort of Social Security and disability. Now she's on that, but there are stopgap programs that are going to help you fix this. And for me, that's my first reaction is, hey, here are the ways you can get money to pay your rent. My first statement to them is, hey, rent is still due. So here's how you can pay it. Now, if they exhaust every option and they show me that they've done that, I deal with different tenants. I have mostly Class C tenants, low income people. So it's always my first reaction just to be stern and say, hey, rent is due. This is what's going to happen. You need to pay your rent. I know evictions aren't enforced right now, but they are going to be later and we can go after you for back rent. If they've exhausted all options, I'm going to work with them. I'm going to figure out a plan of how they can pay their rent over time. Maybe they have 10 months left on their lease or 6 months left on their lease. So we'll just divide the month or two they can't pay and spread it out over those next 6 months. And yeah, the rent's going to be a lot higher, but we're still going to make it so they can pay. You know, I'm going to work with people to make sure that they can pay and don't get evicted if they're working with me and exhausting all options. I'm not going to give any free rides, but I think Tim has a little different perspective. And
Yeah, it's slightly, and it's actually probably just a subtle difference more than anything. But my thought is these people, tenants, probably don't realize or are not thinking about the consequences of just not paying rent. And so I thought it was important to kind of bring that to their attention that like, I agree that I think my first gut reaction is we need to help them try to get the money. And you might think, well, it's not my job. And if this is a one-off thing for a, you know, we'll call it a deadbeat tenant or whatever you might want to classify the person as, that would be one thing, and I would agree. But this is a systemic problem in the country that has nothing to do with how good your tenants are. But if they have the ability to pay you, they're much more likely to pay you. And if they have the motivation to pay you, they're much more likely to pay you. So my thought, frankly, was that we should be talking to them about like, hey, I want to work with you. I know what's going on, and I like you. And I know this isn't your fault. But at the same time, the rent does keep accruing if you don't pay. So that's a problem for you and me. And here's how it'll affect you. And just kind of go through like, hey, like if you don't pay for the next 2 months, that's $3,000, let's say, that you're gonna owe. And then we'd have to try to make that into a payment plan. Imagine taking $3,000 and dividing it by 10 right now. Do you want to add $300 a month to your mortgage, to your rent for the next 10 months? I don't think you do, and I don't want you to. So we need to try to come up with a solution where we're not building on that much to your rent, and or we're finding out, and or nothing, right? And so there are situations where you can get, you're going to be getting paid by the government, like Jordan said. There's also a potential that you qualify for unemployment assistance, which has been changed. So even if they think they don't, they might.
Yep.
So, I want to attack those avenues and then also go to the renter assistance program. So we can send this out to people. Let's see here. I'm going to share my screen again. But just so you know, we have a couple. See here, share. I can send these out to people. I don't know how to do it during the program, so I can send it out afterwards. But how to apply for unemployment assistance, there's a link here, and then also rental assistant resources. I would be providing these people and actively trying to help them get it, right? Especially since most of us, if you're on this call, is probably 1 or 2 people. We're not talking about like, you don't have like 4 dozen people you need to do this for, right? You have a couple. And if those couple people have money and they know it's going to be bad for them to not pay, because most people kind of think, just like student loan deferments. Oh, I'm taking on these student loans. I'll sign up for $45,000 worth of student loans. No big deal. Without ever realizing like what that payment's going to look like when they're 26 instead of 19, right? Same thing here. They don't realize how much 2 months of not paying their rent and then trying to catch up later is going to hurt. It's going to hurt them. It's going to hurt you. And frankly, if they can't do it, guess who suffers? It's not going to be just them. It's going to be you. So I think we're all in this together, and we want to help them. And we want to show them we want to help them, but we want to kind of also let them know like why they need to be helped, or why they need to like take it seriously and not just kind of blow it off and go, this is 2 months where I get to sit at home and watch Netflix all day. And not that everyone's thinking that, but I know that some people are really down, like they're depressed, and I understand why, but we need to keep them pumped up and be like, hey, there's things that you can get out of this, like education, learning, all kinds of cool things that we can be doing right now, but let's not dig a hole, right? So that's kind of like, I guess, the subtle difference in what I'm thinking. I know we've been talking a lot, and I do want to get to some questions, so I'm happy to go over the state of the mortgage market, but let's maybe take on some questions first. Does that sound cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know the first one was asked by John Neal. John, I'm going to actually put you on so that you can talk. Can you hear us right now, John? Currently, he's muted. I'm going to unmute him. Sorry, I guess I thought I already did, but hey, John, can you hear me? there's always the chance that he is no longer actually there. I see he shows up on the screen, so I'm going to keep him there. But John's question, I'm going to go to it here real quick. He said, are there any issues to consider if you're in the middle of a BRRRR deal, or should it not be that hugely impacted since I'll be waiting to refinance after the 6-month seasoning period? So I think that, there's no crystal ball here, right? But your BRRRR deal, your after repair value is going to be directly impacted by sales, right? And so if sales over the next couple months, not the number of sales, but the price of those sales remain strong, then you got nothing to worry about at all. If the prices drop a little bit, that could affect your appraised value on that refinance, and that could affect things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see there being any lending problems with the BRRRR strategy, especially 6 months down the road. But I do see, the potential for the market slowdown. Like, here's a good example. Houses, frankly, don't appraise as good this time of the year as they do in the fall. Why is that? Because the fall is working off summer data and the spring is working off winter data, right? So you actually do see seasonal adjustments in housing values that can range probably somewhere between 1% and 3% on average, just based on seasonality. And so, getting away from this virus a little bit and having sales be strong is going to be your best bet. The cool thing is if you're BRRRRing and you get, if you need to get out of it because you've got a high cost of money, then we just do whatever we have to get you out in terms of loan to value and value. But if you don't need to get out of it, maybe wait 2-3 months. If you see the market shifting, you wait that out a little bit. Jordan, what are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I'd make sure you've got a plan B too. Make sure you've got another option. Absolutely. That's one reason why nothing has changed right now. People or price is just going to crater. It doesn't work that way. We're not the stock market. We don't shift so quickly because somebody woke up and decided today was a bad day and I'm really scared about everything that's happening, so I'm going to sell everything I own. It's based off comps within the last 6 months. That's how appraisers look at them. So it's not going to change. If it does change, it's not going to change that quickly. So if you're doing a BRRRR deal and you need to hold for another 6 months from today, and chances are you're going to be okay, but they're going to use recently solds, and if something happens, they're recently solds that they're going to be using from a month or two prior to their appraisal might be different than what recently solds look like right now. So I think you always need to have a backup plan. You always need to have a plan B. It's like doing Airbnb. Airbnb is great when Airbnb is going good and when tourism and travel is going good. But right now, Airbnb might not be the best strategy. So you need to have a plan B. Maybe you're doing just a regular rental. And if it's a regular rental, something I'm doing is we have vacancies in my apartments. I'm doing some Section 8 now to fill up these vacancies. I usually don't do Section 8, but Section 8 is going to pay no matter what happens. So I'm making sure that I'm covered.
I'm making it so people can ask questions here. By the way, we have a Facebook question, someone who's not on the Zoom call, so I'm going to read that in a second, but I'm just kind of putting everyone in so that we can, I'm looking to hopefully get a little more interaction here because I really want to make this interactive. Okay, so why is it? For some reason, oh, Trevor is using an older version. Trevor, you need to update your Zoom. It's not allowing me to allow you to talk unless I make you a panelist. So I might just do that. If you ask a question in the chat box, I'll make you a panelist so you can talk. Okay, so we do have one question here on Facebook I'm going to do, but if you want to ask a question, just hit us on a quick message and we'll bring you on live. Tim Schultz on Facebook asked, do you guys think there will be an increase in multi-family inventory in the Twin Cities in the next 3 to 6 months? I've seen 80 to 90% of my coworkers furloughed. Unemployment should easily be at least 10 to 20% in the next 3 to 6 months, it makes sense that foreclosures and overall inventory would be substantially, I'm guessing he's meant to put higher, with owners desiring to sell due to the lack of rent payments and or lack of personal income.
And
I'll let you
talk to
start that
this.
one.
Yeah, I know Tim personally. I helped him purchase a duplex last year, and yeah, Tim, I feel for you, buddy. He's in the hotel industry, so obviously heavily affected by this stuff. And again, we don't know, so this is all just Tim and I floating around theorizing. I don't think so, because of all the options there's going to be to get your mortgage payments covered, get your tenants help with mortgage payments. There might just be the people there's going to be a few people that are just not solutions based and aren't going to figure out how they can handle this. And they're going to have some issues. There always is. There's always somebody like that. In the best market ever, there's somebody that doesn't manage their finances well and gets foreclosed on. I don't think that will be a widespread thing with multifamily real estate. There's just too many options to be able to cover your mortgage or your expenses. Your lender is going to give you some options to defer mortgage payments. The federal government is literally giving everybody money. Where that money goes, who knows? People just as a whole aren't great with money. But there's renter assistance programs out there that are going to help renters. There's going to be a few, I'm sure. There always is. I don't think it's going to be a widespread thing.
Yeah, I think it'll be a noticeable number, but I think the other meaning that like Jordan started off with, there's people who are on the edge, right? And this is enough to push them over. And those people are kind of going to be forced to sell. They might have a workout program, but that even just that short amount of time that they're without this income, they're not going to be able to catch up easily, or they have other problems that are going to come up. And it's not just their house, right? It might be they were overextended in every part of their life. Those people will have to sell. But here's what I think the majority of investors don't really get, or that I think is real clear. And maybe it's because you don't talk to investors all day long, but I can't tell you how many people have been telling me for the last 4 years that there's going to be a crash and that they're waiting for the next crash to buy. I mean, just a ridiculous amount of people, and some of them super wealthy.
Yeah.
And so what's going to happen is there's going to be inventory, but there's people waiting to snatch it up. So I think it's going to go very quickly. I don't think it's going to be massively discounted myself. I think it's highly likely that we see a softening where our places sit a little bit longer and they do sell for a couple % less. I think you'll see a couple deals here and there. But if you're looking for like a 20% drop, it's not going to happen. I want to show you something again because I think this is important. But I just want to go back to these numbers and really let it sit home. I saw on Facebook someone post a question about like, what do you think was going to happen to home values? And they started with a 10% drop and went from there, and they went up to 50. Well, in the largest crash that any of us have ever seen, 19.7% decrease in home values. We're not seeing a 50% drop in rates. 400,000 our duplex is not going to be 200. They were 55 in the last crash, some of them, but they were there were holes in the walls that were 85 before that, right? It's not likely we're going to see anything like that because we haven't been building homes. Homes are expensive now to get, and there's a lot more people than there is housing inventory. So I would be surprised anything more than this 1.9. It would surprise me if it goes below 4. A 3% to 3.2% decrease in home values, I could see that happening. I could see a house here or there going a lot further down, but that's just because it was a poor house that was overvalued to begin with. I don't think it's going to just be like the whole market kind of thing. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I have some thoughts too. Obviously I'm a real estate agent with Keller Williams. Gary Keller wrote a book called Shift a few years ago. I do think we are in a shifting market right now. We've been having a lot of conversations about this on our Zoom calls we're having with our brokerage. I think things are shifting towards more of a buyer's market, but I don't think that means that we're going to see a massive drop in prices. Because if things shift, people tend to stay scared. So buyers are going to stay scared, sellers are going to stay scared. People that need to sell their homes are going to sell, but people that are out there that are able to buy them think that, oh, real estate is just not going well, I'm going to stay out. So if you stay positive and stay logical and you know how to analyze deals, you're going to keep buying deals that work. So kind of look at it as dollar cost averaging. Maybe you buy a deal next month that it works for you, it's a good deal. And you buy a deal in 6 months, maybe it's a little better deal. You buy one in a year, it's a great deal, but you're going to be happy you were buying all through this time because you're just generally buying a more stable portfolio. And something, one house is not going to get you rich. So if you're waiting for this massive crash that's people are think is going to happen, and I'm not one of them, just like Tim, I think we'll see a minor adjustment in home prices, but nothing crazy. But if you're waiting for that crazy to happen, you might be waiting in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. You still could be waiting. I know people just like Tim, but just a little earlier. In 2015, I know people that sold a few houses and were saying, hey, the crash is going to happen next year. I know somebody that dumped their entire stock portfolio in 2015 or 16. I can't remember the exact time. Just thinking that the world was going to end and I'm going to jump back in when it's high. You cannot time the market. Every smartest person ever knows that. So just consistently buy and be ready to buy at all times. Make sure you have some reserves. Make sure you're always working on a budget and you're always putting money in savings and building up a nest egg to invest again, and you'll be in a great spot.
Yep. So I'm gonna I'm gonna unmute Scott Jensen. He's on the call. Scott, let me just figure out how to do this real quick because I thought, let's see here, get it here. Okay, Scott's unmuted. Scott, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you guys just fine. How can you hear me?
Good.
I'm good. I'm good.
Hey, Jordan.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I don't know if everyone knows Scott, so I'm going to introduce him. I think a few of you probably do, but Scott is actually a financial planner who specializes in dealing with real estate professionals. So I wanted to unmute him and just kind of get some of his thoughts. I'm sure that's so generic that I'm sure that, like, I don't know if he knows exactly what his immediate thoughts are, because believe me, I'm kind of throwing this at him. But Scott, maybe can you tell us, like, what are the questions you're hearing the most from your clients right now? Let's start with that. Just something real generic, like what are people scared about, or what are people talking about right now?
Right. There's always a lot of talk in a situation like this about how this time is different than previous recessions. There's always the sort of the uncertainty around that. And this time is certainly different than any other recession or downturn in the market. But the thing that people don't realize is every recession, every downturn is different than the prior ones. History doesn't repeat itself. It sort of rhymes at times, but it never repeats itself exactly. So if you look, so the main questions I've been getting are, is it a good time to invest? AKA stocks seem like they're cheaper than they were. And the other question is everything going to go to zero? And I think you guys hit the nail quite well there on the head that that you can't predict future markets in any sort of short-term sense. Nobody knows enough about the coronavirus to have any idea what sort of effect this will actually have over the next few months, maybe even few years. But if you look both at housing markets and as well as stock markets over longer periods of time, there's certainly an indication that we would expect to be out of this recession and back to reasonably good returns at some point in the future, right? So there's no indication that this isn't something we would ever come back from, or that we'd ever be stuck in, or that it's some permanent damage to the economy. There'll be effects of this, but going forward, there's no reason to expect in the long term negative returns.
All right. I just put up a poll about if now is a good time to buy, because I had written that earlier, but I actually want to follow it up with something you said, Scott, with is now a good time to invest in the stock market too. So we'll see what people are thinking out there. Scott, can you talk about strategies that you would use to insulate people in terms of create some security and or liquidity right now? A little open-ended question again, but what are the strategies that you recommend people institute right away? Is there any things immediate, any things they should be thinking about, etc.?
Well, I think you guys once again hit the nail on the head earlier. Cash is king. Certainly now is not the time to pay down debt. It is much better to have cash reserves so you can manage your debts until this thing recovers, right? Because we don't know how long it's going to last. And certainly paying down debts is just most likely going to hurt you as far as liquidity. So if people are looking to invest, the question is how much reserves are necessary, right? And you guys got to touch on that, a couple of months of mortgage payments, how stable is your own situation? Yeah, and so those are the main things to look at, and I think it is a good time to invest because future returns, on average, you're looking for them to be positive, and I think most economists agree with that from a long-term perspective, and most smart ones don't really try and predict the short term, or at least admit that it's a guessing game.
Okay. Are you seeing people sell out of their stock portfolios out of fear, or are they staying in going, I don't want to take the losses, or is it just such a mixed bag that it's hard to characterize?
It is. Everybody reacts quite differently. I've had several clients that were quite concerned, but really, if you were positioned well going into this, there's no reason to be concerned. The needing to be concerned is if you need to sell an investment now, and I think that probably applies to housing as well as stock market investments. It's not a good time to sell, right? It's likely a good time to buy. We don't know what the future holds, but we know that prices are lower than they were, and in the market, or in the housing market, prices don't seem to have softened. If you guys both know more than I do. But it seems like the uncertainty of the future has at least made sellers more willing to acquiesce on certain things, be it being more flexible or possibly dropping prices or just being more flexible with their buyers.
So I work a lot in multifamily, small multifamily, so 2 to 4 unit, helping people with house hacks. And I was just at a listing yesterday that had back-to-back showings. Of course, they're not showings at the same time now, so it's not 5 realtors in there at once, but there was somebody there before me and there was somebody there that came right after me. There's still such a demand, and I'm just speaking of what I'm seeing right now. There's still such a demand that prices are still where they were 3 weeks ago. I know people that work mostly with owner-occupied sellers, and the people that live in the houses, while there's going to be showings, are more concerned because where are they going to go? If you live in a house, frankly, if you don't live in the house right now or you're willing to get out, you kind of have an advantage over everybody else. But people just don't want people in their house that might have the coronavirus, and they're not willing to leave, and where are they going to go if they do? So if you're willing to go out and take a walk and just keep things clean. I know my mother's selling her house right now, and she really doesn't want to get up every couple hours and go out, but she's doing it anyway.
Sure. The other thing that, especially when it comes to investing in stocks, there are things you can do in a downturn to sort of make the best out of the situation. talk to your tax preparer about tax loss harvesting if you've got investments that are stock market investments that are
you
not in a
explain-
retirement account.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, I don't.
So if you've got, let's say, $100,000, your portfolio was at $100,000 last year, and you're at, it's dropped by 30%, and you're at 70,000 now. Well, let's say you bought it at the top of the market. So what you bought it for is $100,000, and what it's worth now is $70,000. So it doesn't mean anything unless you sell, as far as tax wise. But if you sell something and then purchase something similar shortly thereafter, you can recognize those losses on your tax return. And so those losses can eat up any long-term capital gains or short-term capital gains you have in this year. And then the losses can also be carried forward to offset further capital gains. And there's also, you can use those long-term capital losses to offset a small amount, $3,000 of ordinary income. So, and especially if you're in a higher tax bracket, you can be using long-term capital losses to offset ordinary income, which is taxed at a much higher rate. So talk to your tax preparer about tax loss harvesting. That's an important practical thing you can do. The other thing is just rebalancing. If you had a portfolio that was 70% stocks, 30% bonds, and now your stocks have gone down and you're maybe closer to 50% stocks, 50% bonds, get back to your 70-30. You're essentially selling some of the bonds that have held up better and buying some of the stocks. So you're sort of taking advantage of the market downturn there. And then the other thing from a tax planning standpoint, if you are in the position where you're not worried about reserves and things seem fairly stable from your perspective, it could be a good time to do things like converting IRA money to Roth IRA money. If you're in a lower income year, for example, or if the market's gone down 30%, you can convert 30% more of your equities essentially, and then once they recover, they'll be in your Roth account. So there are good tax planning opportunities around there, specifically with stocks. All of that is basically doable with real estate as well. It's just the less liquid nature of real estate makes those things more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That's good to know. So we did get some other questions. If I mute you, are you willing to stay on and answer questions if anyone has anything that's more specific to you?
Sure.
Or I actually don't even have to mute you really, as long. Do you want to just stay unmuted and kind of be a part of the presenters here if people have questions?
Sure, that's fine.
Cool.
That's
All right. So we got like 2 Facebook questions here that I see. One from Brad Smith. What would need to happen for rents to drop significantly? Any thoughts? I guess, Jordan, why don't you start with that one? And
So
What do you
I think
think on
this
that?
is a multifaceted thing too. You're looking at class A, B, and C. I know Grigori, who's on this call, manages a class A apartment building downtown that's just being built. And he had told me that they're not raising rents so much on existing tenants, and I would do the same right now. Hey, if you're a good tenant and you want to renew your lease, let's just keep you at your same rate. You know, it worked for me last year. It's going to work for me this next year in these tumultuous times. So with Class A, I think you're going to see some rent cuts. What you usually see more with Class A is all sorts of move-in options. So let's say first month's free rent. You get a brand new big screen when you move in. I think we'll see more of those incentives with Class A. With Class B, we may see a minor softening of rents if just the demand isn't there. So why I say Class A is probably going to be hit the hardest is those are the $2,200 a month apartments downtown. You know, if people are worried about economic times, they're probably not moving into a $2,200 one bedroom downtown. They're figuring out a better way. So Class B may not be affected as much, but for most of us landlords, we're Class B and C. So I don't think Class C is going to see a major drop in rents just because a lot of these programs out there are going to help the people who are renting, and you may just see more vacancy. That's what's going to make rents go down. If the vacancy rate just skyrockets, let's say we're in Minneapolis, St. Paul right now, we're at a 3% vacancy rate. I know a lot of other markets are around 5 or 6. It's just really low. The vacancy rate is really low, but there's lots of constructions in most markets that I follow. So everybody's building new units. If these units aren't absorbed, the vacancy rate's going to shoot up and people are going to start cutting rents on the top level apartments. So if all these Class A's cut rents and then Class B's have to cut rents, it's just a trickle down effect where everybody's going to have to cut rents. So if vacancy skyrockets, rents will probably go down. I believe that you're safest if you're Class C, or if you're Class C with some sort of assistance program. And again, this is just me theorizing. I don't know, but that's why personally I'm converting some of my 1-bedrooms that are the same rent as Section 8 to Section 8 1-bedrooms instead of just market rent. The market rent's about the same as Section 8, but I'm willing to take Section 8 for $10 less a month to get a guaranteed rent, then get that $10 more and have a market rent tenant in there. So the massive vacancy is what's going to cause it.
Let's bring Grigori in.
Essentially, decreased demand and increased supply is going to cause rent drops.
Right. And I actually, so from my experience before Grigori talks, I guess, from my experience as a longtime landlord, the hardest time for me was actually before the last crash, when it was really easy for people to qualify for a mortgage. There weren't that many people looking to be renters, right? And the ones who were really poor quality. And we had to give up, 1 month's rent, $100 off, that kind of stuff. A lot of concessions just to get people to come see the place. But I think it really does come from a lack of demand. And so how do we get a lack of demand? Well, you've got the economic demand of I can't afford it. And I think that's what Jordan spoke to. The other thing is if people decide they can't afford it and they go live with mom and dad, right? I mean, I think that's the real possibility and the real threat is do people start living together more? And if that's what happens, then we've got, then I think we have real legitimate concerns for lower rents. Otherwise, I think it's an economic vacancy where they just can't afford to pay at certain levels, and then they shift down, and or the A-class buildings, instead of being 2,200, become 1,800.
I'm on a call, guys.
So, but that's a good transition. I can hear Grigori in the background. I know he has good experience with both A-class and what do you call it? Section 8. So Grigori, can you, thanks for coming on. Can you talk a little bit about A-class first and then Section 8 second?
Yeah, sure. How's it going, guys? I'm Grigori. So I'm a community manager for Greystar. Greystar is one of the largest, they're the largest property management company in the world right now. And I manage a brand new building in North Loop called Second and Second. Check us out if you're looking for a place to live. So we need all the rentals we can get right now. It's kind of a tough place for our ownership group. They just finished, they're still finishing the landscaping, things like that, last final touches. And the North Loop market in general, from what I've heard from other community managers, is taking a pretty big hit just in the amount of leads because people do not want to move right now. People are kind of, if they can renew where they are, a lot of buildings are not doing renewal increases right now, where usually they're 4 to 7% in the North Loop area. A lot of buildings have dropped them down to 1% renewal rates. And I've heard of residents even complaining about 1% increases, which is like $20 a month. So we'll kind of see where that goes, but definitely, the amount of leads even from 3 to 4 weeks ago has dropped dramatically. We were getting maybe 6 to 10 leads a day on average, with good interest, and we were getting leases. And now that's dropped to maybe 1 to 3 leads every, 2 to 3 days, maybe every 4 days. And it's a
So
tough
less
place.
than 1 lead a day, basically?
Yeah, definitely less than one lead a day. And so it's definitely hard for ownership groups that are, have new buildings and they don't have any other, like our ownership group, it's their first apartment community that they've built and developed. They're in the luxury home sales and condo sales out of Vail, Colorado. And they're in the hospitality. They have hotels too, so they're getting hit real hard right now, and it's their first apartment community. So we are thinking of doing specials, and we should have a decision today. So we're kind of working through that, our marketing campaigns. Where can we cut our budget? Where can we cut expenses? What can we do ourselves on social media so we're not paying $2,000-$3,000 a month to our ad companies who are doing that for us. So it's kind of an interesting time for the multifamily industry, and I'm kind of interested to see what happens here in the next 2 to 3 months and how this all plays out. I think there is potential for a lot of owners of properties that aren't stabilized, that aren't over 90% occupied right now, to take a hit and to so it'd be interesting to see where we're at with that. Anybody have any questions in terms of the multifamily piece of it?
Not in terms of Class A, but I am curious to find out what you are seeing, or what your thoughts on Section 8 are. Yeah, can you talk about Section 8 and your experience there?
Yeah, I also, other than my full-time job, I'm also a realtor and investor, and I have right now I have six properties. Also helping the parents manage their 20 or so and several other clients. In terms of Section 8, nothing really has changed because Section 8 is still paying rent, and actually, if any of our tenants lose their job and they have proof of that, all we do is we send it to their worker and we say, hey, our tenant is now out of work. They actually will pay the full 100% of rent according to the lease. So, for me, I've always loved Section 8. I grew up seeing my parents do it, and I fell in their path, and I'm also doing it. And I honestly, for what I'm going to do, at least for now, until I start buying apartment buildings, I'm going to continue to buy Section 8 rentals because yes, the tenant management, the property management of it could be a little bit harder. But realistically speaking, managing for my full-time job luxury apartments with the residents we have here versus the residents I have in my Section 8 properties, I would say it's actually easier to manage the Section 8 rentals because their expectations aren't as high and their needs aren't as high as well.
Well, there's obviously a massive demand, right? Because so many people don't want to do it that you're not going to have a demand issue, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, for affordable housing in general, Minneapolis has a crisis. There's just not enough affordable housing. That's why we have a big homeless population. And, anytime I have a property, I literally do one group showing and that's it. I in the last 6-7 properties that I've leased in the last year or so, I have never had to do more than one showing because that's how I do it at least. I mass text or I email, text, respond to everybody, set one date, like Saturday, 1 o'clock, come check it out. And then I'll have 10 to 20 families check out the place, and I at least have 3 to 4 interested families. And I just, I tell everybody that, I've had a lot of interest. I will respond to those interested in the order that, your query was received. So basically I'm not, I'm abiding by fair housing, and I'm not choosing who I, lease to and whatnot. So, because it would just, it's hard to, when there's so many people in need for affordable housing, it's, that's the only fair way to do it. So.
Right, I agree. Cool. Sorry, I wasn't trying to cut you off there. But I agree.
No, that's all I got. I mean, I love Section 8.
Something actually, something came to my mind while you're, it was actually before you got on, but I didn't want to or in between yours, but that, I think one way, going back to Brad's original question, is how could we see rents drop? I think one other vulnerability in the market is if Airbnb hosts, a lot of them have had massive amounts of cancellations. If they get squeezed and they convert to long-term rentals, they might even be they might keep them furnished long-term rentals. That's going to create a lot more supply on the market. And anytime you have more supply, if the demand doesn't stay up with it, you could see rent concessions and rent drops because of that. that would be another, I guess, risk factor, right? That we could be seeing right now that might be unnatural, I guess, that wouldn't have happened if this hadn't happened. But I know there are some Airbnb hosts that have had every one of their bookings canceled. And if that's the case with enough people, they might get squeezed to just have no choice but to turn it into a short-term rental. And they might be happy getting whatever they get, right? They might say, I'll take a low rent for the next year or the next 6 months or whatever it is. So that's
Yeah, I'm doing the same. I'm taking lower rents who I think are going to be more predictable to pay with the Section 8. The Section 8 in Louisville, where my apartments are, it's $20 or $30 a month less, if I remember right, than I can get market rent. But historically, one bedrooms are harder to rent for me. So I'm just looking at it and say, hey, what's the most predictable way I can get paid? I need to pay the mortgage. They're going to give me three-month grace period if I need it. I'm not looking out just 3 months. I'm looking out what can I do for the next year to stay safe. So I think if you're an Airbnb host, yeah, you might dump it on the market. And if you're just a normal landlord, even more, you have to make sure your place looks good and smells good and shows well. And same thing like selling a house. It's got to look great, and people have to walk in and say, hey, I really want to live here. So
right.
landlord, don't not fix that leaky faucet or that old toilet, or it's not time to be cheap. Conversely, you need to spend money to make your rentals look nice because you need to rent them. Yeah, you need to save money in every other area, but it might be time to spend a couple bucks to make them look decent. I'm not saying put granite countertops in everywhere, but if there's some things that need to be fixed, reach out to me. I've got a great handyman. He can come in and fix them for you. It's a good time to get stuff shored up and get it rented well.
Right. That actually goes to something that I've talked about for a long time now is I talk about being better than the other landlord. You're competing against the market, right? So
Yeah.
You don't have to be the best landlord. You just have to be better than the other landlords in your area, or at least you can't be the worst, right? And so I think, it's a little late for this now, but the strategy over my last few years was to get my places while they were cash flowing really well in great condition so that they were desirable, so that there was not the need to spend money if there was a rental problem, that I could actually go in and not have the same issues as other people, that I'd already be better than them, and I wouldn't have the constraint of having to spend, let's say, even a couple $1,000s to make my place nicer to rent. So, hopefully we all make it through this, but that's something to think about, is keeping your properties up when times are good so that you don't have to spend the money when times are not good. So.
I actually, speaking of that, Tim, just spent a bunch of money replacing all the windows in my apartment buildings right before this, and didn't know, but yeah, that's the way I look at things exactly. I try to keep properties up so I don't have to pour a bunch of money on when I don't have it. They're always in decent shape, and it's always a minor fix that needs to be done rather than it needs a new roof or it needs all new windows. And when you've got the money, it might be just time to do that. I know I've been in a lot of Grigori Section 8 properties. There's a reason he rents them that fast. They're decent places. I would live in them. It's, keep your properties nice, and it's going to pay you dividends in the long run. Yeah, it might cost a couple bucks short term, but you're going to be happy when you go to sell or when a coronavirus hits and makes it really hard to rent places.
Hey, just want to, we have one more question right now. If anyone else has a question, I'd love to have you ask it via the chat right now so we can prep it up. Otherwise, we'll probably end on this last question. Adam on Facebook asked if, for folks in the middle of a real estate transactions, are there systems in place to protect buyers and sellers during this strange time? And I think we did touch on this subject, but I think it's worth repeating. Jordan, do you want to start with that, since that's probably more your expertise than mine? But I do think there's a couple of things that you can do to protect yourself right now today.
Yep.
Why don't you talk about that first?
No, there absolutely is. There's a coronavirus addendum / amendment. It just depends where you're at in the transaction. And just to make it easy, I'll read it here real quick. So if you're worried about buying a house right now in these uncertain times, there's an amendment for that. You know, we can make sure that you're protected. So the amendment basically says both the buyer and seller are going to work in good faith to perform their obligations under this agreement. But if something unforeseen pops up because of the coronavirus or COVID-19 that delays this or cancels any event we have, we are going to extend all the deadlines in the purchase agreement by X number of days. Now I'm putting 15 in that. That's just a blank there. We can put in whatever we want, whatever we can negotiate with the seller. Same thing, we have to negotiate this with the seller. But your National Association of Realtors and the local boards of realtors have made these forms available for you to help you continue on buying and selling homes during this period of time. So there are forms there to protect you. Just generally, everybody's very understanding of what's going on. If you're being reasonable and you're saying, hey, the appraiser can't get in because of coronavirus or COVID-19 and he's backed up like crazy, or hey, the inspector can't get in until this date, and you know, I've tried all the inspectors out there. People are going to work with you. They generally do. You know, again, we have aligned interest here. You want to sell, I want to buy, let's make it happen. So
Right.
you need level-headed intermediaries in this whole process. You know, if your agent's whipping up a bunch of hysteria, it's not going to help you. If the seller's agent's whipping up a bunch of hysteria and thinking the world's ending, it's not going to help you. We're all going to be okay. Things might be different for the next few months. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I guarantee you, I'm going to guarantee this. We're going to be okay in the long run. Things are going to be okay. We're going to get through this. Things will get back to normal. We will be buying and selling houses again. Renters will be paying rent. Vacancy will go back to normal. You know, a few people may get hurt in this. They always do. Just make sure you're protected and you're taking care of your own, and you will be okay.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me real quick about the two other things during the transaction. Talk to me about the part of the purchase agreement that allows someone to get out if financing doesn't work out. Can you mention that real quick?
Yep. So we do have a financing contingency in the inspection. Of course, we have an inspection contingency. Inspection periods were getting really short these last few months. I mean, we were doing lots of 5 and 7 day inspection periods. Anymore over the last couple weeks, even the last 2 weeks when things have gotten particularly interesting, we've been doing all 10-day inspections and getting the inspections still done day 2 or 3. So we've got lots of time in there to make sure things are okay, or ask for an extension if we need it. So we're protecting our downside there. The financing contingency, so let's say somebody gets a loan with Tim, they get their pre-approval, everything goes well, and then they lose all their reserves because something unforeseen happens, or they lose their job 2 weeks before closing. They can't get financing anymore, so they can't buy the house, and they get out of the purchase agreement because of that, and they get their earnest money back because of that. If you have a material reason that you cannot get financing, the lender is going to send a letter over to your agent, the buyer's agent. They're going to send it to the seller's agent, and they have to release the earnest money back to you as soon as possible. So in the inspection period, you're protected regardless of what happens. But because of the financing contingency, you're protected if you lose your financing. You know, if you lose your job 2 days before closing, they're not going to give you a loan. I've had it happen before. That wasn't on your listing, Tim, but another one over in East St. Paul this year. A guy lost his job a week before closing. The lender was not willing to give him a loan anymore because he said, hey, man, you don't have a job. You can't pay the mortgage. So you're protected there. And these deadlines are going to get extended from this coronavirus addendum here. If you can't get the inspection done due to coronavirus, you're going to be okay. If you can't get the appraisal done, it's going to extend that, and you're going to be okay from the financing contingency. So the real estate industry is a big part of the economy. and regulators and politicians and everybody wants to make sure that we continue on and people continue to buy and sell houses. So they're going to make sure this happens. And they have measures in place to make sure that the market doesn't just crumble and that real estate transactions don't cease for 3 months. That would be a big deal. It's March. It's the start of the spring. Well, the start of the spring market's kind of in February here, but it's when people start to buy houses rapidly. They don't want that to go away.
Right. Hey, we got a question from Scott. Scott, I'm going to unmute you again and have you come on and ask the question here.
All right,
Scott, can you hear me?
Yep. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, can you ask your question live so everyone can hear it?
Yeah. So I was wondering if you guys have had a chance to look at any of the new mortgage deferral programs under the Relief Acts that just came out. As that could be a way, even as a precaution, to just shore up some cash if you were short on reserves.
Right. That probably should be in my ballpark. And the answer is we've been so busy. I've been the busiest in my career that I know that it's a 60-day deferral program that they're currently talking about. I think that might even end up being long. I think that's just what they're leading with. I think there's a very good chance that it goes longer. I did read an article by Housing Wire, which is like an industry magazine, but it was kind of fluff. It didn't give a lot of the details, like who qualifies and for what reason. So the one thing I can say is, like, I know there's a program. I just don't know the details around that program. Like, does it only qualify if you live in the property or what? I do know a couple things. 60 days, and currently you have to be a Fannie or Freddie loan, right? I expect that to roll out to other programs. A couple of things you should know. Whether people know it or not, it's already built into FHA. FHA has workout programs all the time, every time it's part of your mortgage insurance, you're protected. So if you have an FHA loan, actually, I've got really good news for you. Even if they don't roll out any other programs, it's already built into your mortgage insurance. The catch is most people, including loan officers, don't know that, but same with servicers. So they're going to have to, the person on the other, when you call up your servicer, they're trained, right? But they don't understand, meaning like they know what they're taught, but they don't understand mortgages. So they don't know mortgage insurance, for example. So they're going to need to be taught this. And it's very, very possible that you might need to coach them yourselves. FHA workout programs, there are like 4 different options, but the easiest one that I can explain is one of them is called forbearance. And essentially what's going to happen in a forbearance situation is you can forbear. I believe the details are a little foggy because I used to do this a lot in 2010 and 11, is help people through this. But I believe it's up to 6 months as part of FHA's mortgage insurance that you can defer over the course of the loan. So that means if you use up all 6 months now, you get none in the future, right? But you could use up 2 months today, and then save 4 months for, in case you break your leg in the future or something like that. What it does is similar to what you've heard is it doesn't save you from those payments. It just pushes them to the end. So you've got you're 60 months into a 360-month loan. They will not collect payments from you for 2 months. And then at the end of that 2-month period, you'll still have another 300 months remaining. And just everything gets pushed back. So that is their forbearance program. They actually have some other programs as well, but that's the easiest one to explain and the one that I remember off the top of my head. I also know that if you have mortgage insurance, every single mortgage insurance provider has some safety net for you as well. But I think it's risky for me to tell you what that is because it's going to vary per mortgage insurance provider. So for all of the awful things that people think about mortgage insurance, most of which I believe are untrue, you should know that mortgage insurance has your back as well. They would rather have you stay in your house than foreclose. So if you want to contact me, I can individually help people if you have questions, try to sort through that, because I don't frankly think that the low paid person on the other end of the phone, if you call in, is going to know what those are right away. And you actually might have to inform them of what that looks like. And it's going to take a little bit for me to figure out who your mortgage insurance is with. So those are some of the things we'd have to kind of sort out together.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Well, anything else? Does anyone have any other questions? Throw something in the chat box, maybe. I see there's still a few of you on here. I can just start unmuting people if you got a question, and just tell me if you got a question. If you don't, we really do appreciate the fact that you all have come on this call. Scott just was on, so I think. So anyone here have a question that they'd like to talk about before we end the call?
Thanks, Thor.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys. That was great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn.
Yeah, not everyone got unmuted. I hit unmute to everyone, but like, I don't know.
There's Lucas there. Thanks, Lucas.
Are you seeing things like posting or something?
Just the chat box. I'm seeing stuff pop up.
Oh, I'm only seeing question and answers. Where's the chat box? I see question and
Q&A.
answer. Huh?
Phil's just saying thanks for this. Thanks, Phil. Thanks for being on.
Got it. Yeah, I appreciate it. I can't even see it for whatever reason. It's probably I got the wrong window open or something, but I'm seeing the question and answer stuff only. So anyway, appreciate everyone being on this. I think most of you know how to get a hold of Jordan and I, but this has also been put on Facebook Live. So if you have anyone who wants to watch a portion or all of it or ask questions, tag us in the questions so that it shows up in our notifications, and be happy to go back and answer them or talk offline.
Yeah, absolutely. Always here to help.
All right, thanks everyone.
Yeah, thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
Yep.
Happy quarantine.
Yeah, right. Bye now.
Stay safe. See ya.
Thanks,
Lynn.
Lynn.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
bye-bye.